Welcome to Encounter Wargaming. I'm Jay, and today we're going to be looking at a 3rd edition Codex Space Marines. Codex Space Marines, 3rd edition. So this, I think, was the first Codex of 3rd edition. I'm not entirely sure if it absolutely was the first, but I think it was the first, and it would make most sense if it was the first, considering Space Marines always get first dibs, first love. They get the most love. Always have. I mean, realistically so, though. They are kind of GW's poster child, I suppose. The, I guess, iconic symbol of Warhammer 40,000 has always been and will always probably be the Space Marine. So here we go, we got some awesome cover art of the Crimson Fists there. And like I say, the 3rd edition starter set came with Space Marines and Dark Eldar. And this was the release of the Dark Eldar. So we're going to be going over the Dark Eldar book next, in the next video. But for today, we're going to be doing the Space Marines. So, as you can see, in comparison to the 2nd edition videos we've been doing, this book is quite a bit thinner than the 2nd ed codices were. And that's probably just because in this edition, they really, I think, they got the idea that fans were complaining that the books were too expensive, that there was just a bunch of unnecessary fluff, when what people really wanted was rules. And so in this edition, GW really started to create these little tiny codices, which were really like straight to the point, streamlined rules with very little extra, extra fluff, extra decor. And people complained about that they were just skinny little pamphlets. Why am I paying $30 for a skinny little pamphlet? And they'd be like, well, you complained spending $50 on a large book, and now you're saying you don't want to spend $30 on a small book? Like, whatever. You'll see as we go through this edition that these codices are very tiny. They're not quite as big as the other ones, but they did in this edition start releasing campaign books and supplements and add-on codices, so it got to the point where like your army literally had like 3 thin codexes as opposed to one big fat codex. And so, 6 of one, half dozen of the other, I guess. Do you want to buy 3 skinny books or 1 big book? Right? Anyway, without further ado, that's sort of the, I guess, history of the situation. This is where we're at in Warhammer 40,000, and so let's just get right into it and start getting into these codices. So we got Codex Space, I almost said Chaos Space Marines, Codex Space Marines, with the Crimson Fists as the iconic cover art there. Ooh, right away. We've got a massive picture of a gigantic Ultramarines army. Now you can even see at this point, if you look closer at this, that these are actually all the old 2nd ed models, like the Land Raider. That was the old Land Raider. And this edition was when they came out with the new plastic Land Raider. I shouldn't say new, because it's like 20 years old, but what we currently know as the Land Raider kit was came out in this edition. So at this point, we've still got all the old Rhinos, the old Predators, we've got the old Crayon Launcher Whirlwinds, and the old Land Raiders, as well as the old Monopose Space Marines and Terminators. Just showing you that, basically. So I guess what we have here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wow. So this is actually 5 companies worth of Space Marines. That's absolutely nuts. That's literally half a chapter right there. And then we've got, yeah, another 30 plus all the Terminators. This is probably the entire Ultramarines. Yeah, it says Ultramarines chapter. This is literally the entire Ultramarines chapter. That is absolutely nuts. Holy cow. And you can see even by their squad markings, 2nd company, 3rd company, just by the colors on their shoulder pads. Crazy. This is obviously all 1st company in the front. Wild. That's insane. Can you imagine painting an entire chapter of Space Marines? Crazy. Anyway, here we are with the important page. As I say, this is always, when we're looking back at old school books, this is the most important page because it gives us the publishing information, the writers, the artists, that kind of stuff. So this one came out in 98. That makes perfect sense because that's literally when the rulebook came out, so this came out the same year. Again, they started the starter set with the Space Marines and the Dark Eldar, so they probably wanted to release the Space Marine and Dark Eldar codices first, which makes absolute sense. And this one specifically is written by Andy Chambers, Jervis Johnson, and Gavin Thorpe. So we're seeing less of Rick Priestley these days, and a lot more of Andy Chambers, which is cool because Andy Chambers is awesome. And I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, he did a lot of the, I guess, spearheading of this edition, for lack of a better word. The third ed codex, the third ed's Orc Codex that he wrote, really stuck through all the way till 5th, which is awesome. I mean, it sucks for us Orc players, but the truth is those rules were even good in 4th, that they didn't even need to come out with a new book, so that's absolutely insane. I mean, it sucks not to get a new book, but when your army's still performing well 2 editions later, you know that somebody wrote those rules properly. So let's just start whipping into this. What do we got here? Space Marines. Why collect a Space Marine army? Again, this sweet new style of artwork that we're getting in this edition that we didn't see in past editions. Again, I don't know the name of this artist, but if anybody could maybe comment below and let me know which artist actually draws this cool, like, sort of, I don't want to say 2D, but this kind of like straight flat-on art that we see all over 3rd edition, then please let me know which artist it is so I can give him proper credit in these videos. And this book is not in the best condition out of all my other books, but it's okay. It's good enough. We can definitely take a good look. You can see it's been torn up a bit on the edges here and stuff, but that's okay. Again, more of that cool art. What's in this book? Get some cool fluff. And right away, we get right into the army lists. Crazy, right? In the 2nd ed book, there was pages and pages about how a Space Marine's made, the Imperium of Man, how it's organized, all this stuff. Here, we literally have like 2 pages, like, what is this book? Oh, it's a codex. Oh, bam, armies. Right off the bat. So like I say, people were complaining there was too much extra in the book when all they wanted was rules, so they started coming out with codices that were just straight to the point rules. And like I say, people even complained about that. So I guess there's no making geeks happy, right? We're always going to complain about something. There's just way too many trolls in this community, in our communities, I should say. So again, we're seeing the Force Org chart. This was really the introduction of the Force Org chart in this edition. Before that, like I said, we had percentages. There was a percentage of squads, percentage of heroes. Now we're actually looking at battlefield roles and the specific selections. So here it's showing the standard Force Org chart, 1 HQ, 2 troops, kind of what we're used to seeing all the way through, even through 7th. Yeah, so that's the start of the Force Org chart. Giving you a couple of basic special rules, and they shall know no fear, of course, right? And drop pods, which is interesting because they actually didn't come out with a drop pod model until like mid 4th edition, I think. So it's funny that even back here they give you the possibility of drop pods. I didn't even think drop pods existed in 3rd. Let's actually take a look at this. I want to read this quickly. Deep strike rules. You can declare your Space Marines deploying and landing in drop pods. Models doing this deploy using the deep strike rules, Warhammer 40,000 rulebook. Only the following can deploy from drop pods. No other models in the army. Space Marines in power or Terminator armor, Space Marine scouts, and dreadnoughts and land speeders. Interesting. Okay, so there was no actual drop pods. It's just like you can decide if all your Space Marines want to teleport in. Basically, deep strike. Without an actual drop pod model being left on the battlefield, I guess that was what they changed in 4th to actually make the drop pod a legitimate transport that landed and could fire stormbolter shots or missile shots or whatever, while your dudes disembark and assault the enemy. Anyway, Space Marine Armory. So again, we're still kind of taking the 2nd ed way of doing things in the sense that there's a generic armory at the front of the army list, and then it gives you all of the squad entries after that, or all the unit entries after that, I should say. As we started to get more into 6th and 5th and 6th and stuff, you'll see a lot of the options listed in the actual unit entries, but in this edition, again, we're a step out of 2nd edition, so you literally have a generic armory that all your dudes get to choose from. Makes sense, same way we've always kind of done things, making the actual unit entries very simplified. As you can see here, they're able to actually fit 3 in a row like this, even with extra space for, you know, decorative descriptions and pictures and such. So all it's really giving you here is they can take equipment from the armory. Boom. So your Space Marine hero can take equipment from here. And we still have 3 levels of hero, which is kind of neat. And I remember in this edition, that's when they introduced the Force Commander. I had never heard the term Force Commander before this edition. So they just changed the ranking system, kind of, but basically same thing as before. As in 2nd edition, you have your 3 levels of hero, except in this, they sort of changed the levels they go up in characteristics, because in the last edition, he would have a weapon skill plus skill 6, and 4 wounds, and so on and so forth, right? The mighty hero. Anyway, so we've got librarians, chaplains, and again, they've sort of just listed their special rules generically here. They're all independent characters. They can all have a command squad, regardless of which character you take. The only difference between them, these 3 being actually, is just that the librarian gets a basic psychic power called Smite. Strange, right? Considering everybody has Smite as the generic power these days. And like I say, there was no psychic phase in this edition. They'd done away with the psychic phase. It was literally just moving, shooting, and assaulting. So psychic powers were basically just weapons. And in this case, it is done in your, smite his enemy in his own shooting phase, counts as a weapon that automatically hits using this profile. Strength 4, AP 2, Assault 1, Blast. 12-inch range. So not super powerful, but, you know, AP 2, that's pretty big. Literally just like, BAM! Head explodes. Cool. Not quite as powerful as Mortal Wounds either, but awesome nonetheless. And here we go, final HQ choice, the command squad, of course, not taking up an HQ slot, being part of the other characters. It's just funny how we're going, like, I'm sorry, I'm still blown away by the fact that we're just going right into the army straight off the bat with almost no fluff. So anyway, elites, we've got your standard, your Terminators and your Assault Terminators, kind of what we've always seen. So these are your Power Fists and heavy weapons, and then these are your, you know, Lightning Claws and stuff like that, Thunder Hammers, etc., etc. We've got Dreadnoughts, we've got Veterans, okay, so exactly what we expect to see in an Elite's choice. And again, I would go through all the crazy rules here, but it's funny how they actually put Deep Strike in the Terminator special rules, even though they gave you that sort of drop pod amendment there where Terminators can be brought in using drop pod. It's basically the same thing, they just got the Deep Strike, right? Deep Strike, see the Terminator armor rules for War Gear section. Interesting. Okay. Dreadnoughts. Basic, it's actually giving you the options here, so they don't take from the armory, obviously. They have their own special upgrades and stuff, which is basically just Dreadnought weapons. And troops, the standard troops we're used to seeing for Space Marines. Obviously now we have Primaris, which have added extra troop choices like the Reavers and stuff like that. Whereas in this edition, we literally just have a tactical squad and a scout squad. That's it. And they can be put in a Rhino or a Razorback. We actually didn't even have Landspeeder Storms yet. That was something I think came out in 6th, maybe even late 5th, but at least that, possibly 6th. So we really just had the Rhino and the Razorback at this point. And I guess there's not really much explanation here. I mean, of course, the Scouts have Infiltrate and Move Through Cover. Otherwise, they're basically just Space Marine stat line across the board with a 4-up save. They can have a Veteran Sergeant. You can give one a heavy bolter or an autocannon or a missile launcher. That's interesting. I've yet to ever see a scout model with an autocannon. But that's super cool. Yeah, frag, crack grenades, blah, 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 blah. Fast attack. We've got, again, your standards, sort of what you expect. I didn't even think there were scout bikes in this edition either, but apparently there is. So cool. I didn't think those models were actually that old. That's pretty neat. So anyway, we've got assault squads, bike squads, attack bike squads, right, obviously, scout bike squads. And then they've actually separated the land speeders into different selections. So you've got your standard land speeder squadron, which would just be your land speeder with the one heavy weapon on the passenger side there. The Tornado would be the one with the weapon underneath, I believe. Yep. So that can be, in this case, it's actually saying a heavy bolter, multi-melta. Heavy bolter plus heavy flamer is what it comes with. Heavy bolter can be a multi-melta, and the heavy flamer can be upgraded to an assault cannon. Oh, okay. Cool. Weird. Because now you can have any combination of things. You could have 2 heavy flamers, you could have a multi-melta and a assault cannon. You could have a multi-melta and a heavy flamer. You know, you can do a bunch of different combinations. And they're nowadays, at least as far as I know, they're included as normal land speeders. It just upgrades certain ones in the unit to have these different combinations. And I know at least in the last edition, 7th edition, you could definitely mix them and have like a whole unit of tornadoes or a mixture of typhoons, tornadoes, and normal land speeders, blah, 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 blah. The typhoon, like I say, of course, being the missile launcher guy. But in this edition, I guess they wanted to keep them separate. The different patterns are actually separate fast attack choices, which is interesting. Does it tell me here how many you can have per unit? The normal land speeder squad is between 1 and 3 vehicles. Okay, that's interesting. The tornado, however, crew line bearing power armor does not count as open topped. I guess it's just a single tornado. Same with the typhoon, just a single typhoon as a fast attack choice. Yeah, it doesn't say that they can have more in the unit. That's interesting. So your normal land speeders are in units of 3, whereas the other guys are just taken individually. I can eat up your fast attack choices very quickly. Anyway, and then heavy support. Again, sort of the standard stuff we're used to seeing. Now, there wasn't any Land Raider patterns yet at this point, so they really just have the one Land Raider entry here, because this was the introduction of the model we know and love today. The Crusader came out later with the Black Templar Codex, like sort of pre-4th. And then, so this would be your basic Godhammer, is what people call it, the sort of standard Land Raider with the las cannons and the heavy bolters. And then, of course, you know, again, with just like the land speeders, I guess they've separated the Predators into an Annihilator and a Destructor, which is interesting. So they're actually 2 separate heavy support choices. So the Annihilator being the one with the las, twin-like las, and the Predator being the one with the Predator autocannon. And of course, Vindicators. They've been around since 2nd, so they had to throw them in there. Actually, the picture there is showing the old 2nd Ed model, which is wicked cool. Well, a drawing of the 2nd Ed model. And standard Devastator squads, of course, and a Whirlwind. So, as you can see, that's the army list. Not really a lot, eh? So like I say, they really simplified things in this edition. And as they expanded more and more, they come out with more supplement books, as I say. Then they started to add more and more to the game until they finally got to 4th, where they just kind of consolidated everything. Obviously, all the codices were backwards compatible, which is great. This was the first time they started doing that, because we see from Rogue Trader into 2nd, they changed the rules completely, had to redo everything. And now from 2nd into 3rd, they had to change the rules completely and redo everything. And so from 3rd, we're seeing now a foundation that they're going to carry through the next 4 editions. So rather than completely redoing everything every time, they just redo the core rule book. And then these, like I say, these codices become backwards compatible. So a lot of the special rules, you'll see especially in 4th, they'll say refer to the rule book rather than listing the special rules in the unit entries. So that way, if they change the core rule book, it doesn't mean it means they don't have to update all the codices, at least not right away. And then they get to see which ones work, which ones don't with the new rule set, and update accordingly, giving the priority to the ones that don't work properly with the current rules. So now we're getting into all the cool, fun, how to paint your army, how to choose your army type pages. So here we go, we've got just a very small detachment, 1 HQ and 2 troops. You know, you got your commander with his command squad, add a tech marine in there just for shits and gigs, and then 2 tactical squads. Again, all the old 2nd Ed models, because again, they probably haven't come out with the, or at least hadn't come out with the 3rd edition starter set when they designed this book and printed it, because again, I think they wanted this to be the first release. And here we've just got some cool examples of some awesome paint jobs. Once again, you can tell, old Rhino, right? Old Razorback from 2nd Ed, the old round turret Predator from 2nd Ed, and the crayon launcher Whirlwind. Super cool. The old one-pose Terminators. I believe it was this edition that they came out with the multi-part Terminator kits, which was a godsend, as well as the more multi-part Space Marine kits, because these Space Marines they're showing here are actually the multi-part kits, whereas the ones that they showed here, no, those are the old multi-part kits, but they came out with much. Like in this edition, it was like the torso and the legs were 2 different pieces, then 2 arms, 2 shoulder pads, and a gun, as well as the backpack. Later, they introduced where the head, like the third ed ones, they had the head as a separate piece, which made a big difference. And a lot more weapon options and a lot more posability in the future kits. Whereas in this book, we're just seeing the old, even the old second ed Devastators, where, you know, all the weapons are sort of over the shoulder. That aesthetic slowly went away. So the missile launcher, of course, in the third ed starter set was much more sleek. It wasn't quite as like big and over the shoulder as this one. It was still over the shoulder, but it was much smaller and more compact, looked more like a RPG, you know what I mean? Anyway, I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but that's okay. I'm not off topic yet. So here we go. We've got 2 Space Marine forces shown here. This is Dark Crusader Force. I guess that's this Alan Merrick guy's specific Space Marine chapter he's come up with. And wow, we even see the old Rogue Trader Landspeeder here. So again, I don't think they've come out with the new plastic Landspeeder yet. The actual starter set for third came with the plastic Landspeeder that we know and love today. The very, like, I want to say it looks more like a car that's flying than this thing, which actually looks more like a aircraft to me. And the same old Whirlwind, we get a new Whirlwind in this edition. Old Rhino, we get new Rhinos in this edition. So, like I said, this book was probably at least designed before the third ed starter set came out, because they wanted to release it right away to get people playing with Space Marines and Dark Eldar right off the bat. So you're going to see that as we go through future editions too. A lot of the time, right at the beginning of a new edition, you'll see a lot of the models from the past edition, which as it progresses further through this edition, and we get new models, and makes these models just look absolutely silly. And they're showing you some basic tactics, how to deploy your stuff properly. It's pretty cool. Just some ideas of how to do this. And here we're seeing, it's strange actually that they don't have any of the new models. I guess they hadn't come out yet, but we do see the terrain that they give you in the third ed starter set. So in the second ed starter set, we got those cool cardboard buildings. In this starter set, we actually got this was the first time we saw the plastic jungle trees, as well as these plastic ruins that we're seeing here. I'll give you a couple sets of ruins, give you some of the trees, not this many trees, but obviously the studio, the GW studio has made their own interpretations of this terrain and how to utilize it to make some line of sight blocking forests and stuff. Moving on, examples of all the Space Marine color schemes of all various chapters. Obviously not all of them, but the ones that were popular at least at this time. And if I'm looking at them correctly, some of these Space Marines are the old school Space Marines, and some of these are the new plastic Space Marines. So I guess they were out, it's just they, like the ones from the new starter set, from the third ed starter set. And you can tell by some minor details, like this guy's here, the Revilers guy, in comparison to this Ultramarine guy. You can see he's holding the old bolter, the old style bolter with that sort of like more boxy body on it. To these two guys, like the Rampagers guy here, the Revilers and the Black Templars dude here, all have sort of that new bolter. And you can see the dynamics have changed drastically. Like this guy here doesn't have the what's the word I'm looking for, knee pads, the standard knee pads. And then even then, you'll see with the old models, the knee pad is just like a straight circle, whereas all these new ones, or new, they'd be new at this point, they're super old for us, but new at the publication of this book, they started to incorporate all these little square aesthetics. Like, I don't know how to describe them, these little weird squares that just appear everywhere on Space Marine armor. Those weren't on the old models. So that's just interesting to note. You can really see the difference, especially when they're next to each other, of this guy and this guy, right? And same here, like this old school Ultramarines, this old school white consoles. Even the old school Aurora chapter guy here in comparison to the new Rampager, Reviler, Black Templar here, right? You can really see, it's not drastic, but these Space Marines are just a touch bigger. You can see how wide this guy stands on his base. He's practically at the edge, as well as he's quite a bit bulkier up here, whereas this guy, you can see he's not quite reaching the edge of his base. Now he is in a more standard straight up pose. But even this dude here, who has his legs spread to the point where he is on the edges of his base, you can tell just by looking at this Rampager's model here in comparison to these couple of guys that his shoulder width is a lot larger. Just everything's just a slight little tiny bit bigger. And this is the scale creep we start to see over years in this game. When you look back to this period and then look at today, we get that general sort of small scale creep. A little bit, Space Marines just got a little bit bigger with each edition until we finally get to 7th, where they are quite a bit bigger, and in fact they start putting them on 32mm bases instead of 25s. And then we have the advent of Primaris Marines in 8th, which just, you know, blew the whole scale creep right out of the water with true scale Space Marines, if you want to call them that. Anyway, I've rambled enough about the Space Marine scale creep. Here we go, standard how to paint Ultramarines. Not exactly the best painting techniques, but I guess they're just trying to teach you the basics. It's really interesting, actually, because nowadays the painting lessons are a lot more in-depth than that, even the ones they put in White Dwarf and in the codexes and stuff. But I suppose that's a good enough basis. Just green bases, blue and yellow and red, with a little bit of metal. Cool. Interesting, there's no washes involved. They're just teaching you how to use straight colors. So I guess they just want you to use the colors straight out of the starter paint set. Sort of teaching you how to, you know, do the basics, water transfers, which people just don't do much of anymore. And once again, showing you how to make your own terrain. So here we go. So here's the old cardboard terrain that they give you. Right, they're showing that. You could probably still buy them at this time. And then they're also showing these plastic ones that come in the starter set. Those are awesome. I have one terrain piece in my current gaming table that still utilizes this plastic piece. I wish I could get a whole bunch more of them because I actually really like them, and they're still aesthetically applicable to today's game. And then, like I say, Games Workshop has kind of gotten out of this kind of stuff lately, but in this edition at least, they taught you how to build your own terrain pieces from scratch. Nowadays, there's not much of that encouraged by Games Workshop itself. It seems to me that they want you to buy the plastic terrain sets, and so, especially in 8th edition 40k, terrain means very little, except for the sets that they sell have rules. Other than that, there's not really any rules for like analog pieces. Now, of course, you could do them counts as the plastic set kind of thing. But for a terrain freak like me, if you guys watch my other videos, you know I'm a terrain fanatic. This kind of stuff is much missed in the new books. They should really be teaching people how to do this kind of stuff on their own, you know, rather than just, hey, buy our plastic sets. But once again, I guess they made the plastic sets with the intention of selling them, and so they want to sell them. So you can't really blame them. But here's just some cool depictions of various armies. Again, we're looking at a lot of the old tanks. I still love the old Razorbacks, though. This turret is just so cool to me. I would love to get a whole bunch of these and put these, the Space Marine actually sitting on there with a giant shield in front of his face. Excuse me. So we've got the Las Plaz one there. The Heavy Bolter one here. The old school Predator, Annihilator. The rounded, I love that rounded turret. And the Predator Destructor is a little more boxy. But still, we're still looking at the old school models here. The Crayon Launcher again. Got one of these in my current Iron Warriors army. Awesome model, super stupid looking. But I put the crayon on the current Rhino, obviously. Because these rhinos are just way too freaking small. Again, scale creep. There you go, giving you the basics of how to paint your tank, just a little bit of edging, so a little more advanced onto the last tutorial where we're teaching how to paint the guys. But basically the same idea, it's just here they've introduced the idea of, you know, edge highlighting. Yeah, in fact, it's very lacking in colors. It's basically just black, metal, and blue with some edging and a couple of transfers, and boom, done. Adding extra details, here we go. So doing a little bit of shading with some dry brushing of silver over top of the black. Here I've done a little bit of weathering with some wash dripping down off the rivets. A little bit of edge, a little bit of mud along the bottom where the track's been running through stuff. And then here they even incorporated that wire that we used to see back in Rogue Trader all the time. That people used to put on their tanks. Not sure what the purpose of that is. Maybe some form of antenna or something. Those of you out there who are actually knowledgeable on real life tank warfare, please let me know what this little like dangly wire is that you see all the time in Rogue Trader as well as 2nd edition. Don't see it that often, but when I do see it I always think, what was the purpose of that? So please comment below, let me know. I'm really interested to know. Cool. We saw this in the 2nd ed book, the diorama by Mike McVeigh of the Emperor up against Horus. Super cool, dead Sanguinius there, a bunch of dead Khorne Berserkers, which is definitely interesting. Considering Khorne Berserkers, I don't even think were a thing in the heresy, but again, they've retconned a lot of stuff and changed a lot of stuff, so it is what it is. Cool. So now we're getting into a little appendix here. So I believe this is add-on rules. Again, this codex is basically just an army list, and then they give you all these cool pages to sort of teach you how to build your models. And then this appendix will probably just be additional rules. Let's see what it actually has in it. Okay, so it's basically just summaries of the war gear and what it does. Because in the war gear list, obviously it doesn't explain the rules for those weapons. So here we've got, you know, various things: bionics, auspex, artificer armor, force weapons, Iron Halo, jump packs. It's just basically explaining to you how all these things work. Corsarius, Psychic Hood, right? Space Marine Bike, Storm Shields, Teleport Homer, Teleport or Terminator Honors, Thunder Hammers, Servo Arms. Basically just explaining all the things in detail. So when you give somebody something, you just look to the back of the book for all of your explanations of all your rules, which is actually really handy and really streamlined, especially in comparison to 2nd edition, where you had your war gear section, you had your bestiary section, and then when you finally got into the army list, then you had your war gear list with all your points and the units with all their points, and then you had to flip back to look through the war gear section, look through the bestiary section. In this edition, they've given you the army list right up front. They've given you a whole whack of stuff in the middle to teach you how to paint and play and whatever, and then literally all the summaries in the back of the book here. So it's super well laid out. There we go, and we also have special characters. That's pretty cool. So we've got Marneus Kelgar, Master of the Ultramarines, Chief Librarian Tigurius. You can see here has the basic smite power that the other librarians had, but he also has some other abilities. Captain Cortez of Crimson Fists, the Emperor's Champion, because at this point the Black Templars were not considered a separate thing. They didn't have their own sort of chapter rules until right before 4th. They sort of gave them a book, which lasted through 4th. It was created with 4th in mind. So they were just seen as a, I guess, Ultramarine successor chapter. They're actually an Imperial Fist successor chapter, but again, Imperial Fists didn't have their own rules in this edition either. I believe it was just the Blood Angels and Dark Angels that had their own codices in this. Oh, and of course Space Wolves had their own codices in this edition. And then, like I say, they created the Black Templar book right before 4th came out, and that was the introduction of the Land Raider Crusader. As I was saying before, we didn't have Crusaders in this edition. They were created specifically for the Black Templars, which is kind of cool. Salamander's Chaplain Xavier, Sergeant Lysander of the Imperial Fists. There you go. And again, very short entries. These are your 3 special rules for this character. This is your special rule for this character. So he's got a bolter drill. Reroll, if you wish, the hit dice for any bolter fire undertaken by a squad led by Lysander. That's cool. If you do, then you must reroll all your hit dice, not just the ones that missed. Ooh, that's kind of shitty. You may only reroll bolter fire, bolt pistols, heavy bolters, etc. Cool. Now we're getting into interesting scenarios specific to the faction. That's a cool idea. I had forgotten about that. So rather than just scenarios being in the core rules, each codex comes with some extra scenarios too. And this one is Planetfall. That's interesting, because in, I guess it would have been 5th, they finally introduced Planetfall as its own sort of supplement or expansion to the game. So that's kind of neat. They include a little, and of course with modified force org charts based on the mission. Oh, it's just the one. That's super cool though, that they have a faction-specific mission. Planetfall makes sense, because you're showing in this piece of art all the drop pods coming in, right? That's super cool. And again, at the beginning there, they sort of gave you that little, like, extra, this is an extra special rule. If you want to use it, you can have all your Space Marines deep strike in using drop pods. Neat. Even before there was a drop pod model. It actually blows my mind that they waited till like 4.5 to come out with a drop pod model, because that is literally part of the fluff and has been part of the Space Marine fluff since the very beginning. That's why they're called the Angels of Death, because they literally fall from the sky and take you out. Cool. And then we're finishing it off with just some fluff, some cool Apothecary Malice testimony. That's neat. Oh, cool. What's this here? Oh, okay. Chapter organization. Very similar to the ones we saw in 2nd edition, just less pretty. Showing the layout of how companies... So this is the Ultramarines, right? You have all your leaders of the chapter. First company is, of course, the Veteran Company. You have 4 battle companies, 4 reserve companies, and then the 10th company, which is the Scout Company. And then all these extra things added on. And so they're showing you, actually, they're showing you here... Excuse me. Showing you here what a Space Marine force would look like. So we're seeing here, yeah, we've got a whole bunch of stuff taken from the armory. So servitors, tech marines, predators, vindicators, a librarius and an apothecary, as well as the fleet, which is interesting. It's showing Thunderhawks, strike cruisers, and then we've got 10 Terminators and 2 Land Raiders from the first company, a captain, a chaplain, an apothecary, veteran sergeant, and 35 tactical marines, 20 Devastator marines, and 8 assault marines, 2 dreadnoughts, 6 rhinos, 6 land speeders, 10 bikes, 2 attack bikes, all from the third company, and then 20 scouts from the 10th company. And that would be what they're calling here a retaliation force. That's kind of neat. They're just showing you, even though this is the chapter outline, this is how strike forces, Space Marine strike forces, are organized. Super cool. I like that. That's really neat. And then, of course, here we've got the original 20 legions. Yep, showing them all here, and their Primarchs, except, of course, the 2nd and the 11th, which have been expunged from Imperial records. And you can see excommunicate Traitors. Second founding chapters. Interesting. I didn't know the Salamanders had no second founding chapters. That's kind of weird. I thought the Space Wolves only had 1 or 2 second founding. Yeah, it's showing Wolf Brothers. Space Wolves are one of the ones that don't really have second founding chapters. I didn't know the Salamanders didn't, so that's interesting. I'll give you a little timeline here. Yep, right from the Unification Wars all the way to the Heresy. So we're going all the way up to M32. Actually past the Heresy, I suppose. Primarchs reportedly die or disappear. Through subsequent foundings, the number of Space Marine chapters has increased. Cool. Awesome. Oh, this is kind of neat. The day of a Space Marine. What a Space Marine goes through in his daily. This is the daily Astartes rituals. You leave from 4 a.m. to midnight every day. Crazy. That's super cool. I like that. And we'll take again, I'm not going to read through all the fluff, like I said before. If you guys want fluff videos, comment below, and I will do fluff videos for you guys. But right now, I'm not going through all the fluff. I'm just showing you the cool book, which we're pretty much done looking at. So, final page here. Another bunch of cool pictures of painted models. Again, the aesthetic is still kind of second edition. We still have those flock green bases on everybody. This one they've given a snow base, but it's basically just the green flock painted white. Super easy. You'll see the aesthetic change as these books progress. Definitely. Just a little squad of Black Templars on the back there. And there's the plastic missile launcher I was talking about. What we know as the current missile launcher. In fact, they've even improved it now to have a backpack with missiles on it. In this edition, we didn't even have the backpack with missiles on it. It just gave you a couple extras you could like glue to the guy's belt or whatever. So these are the starter set Marines, the new plastics at this point. So we're seeing a progression and evolution of the kits as well as the rules. So there is, you know, real quick and easy. Like I say, they're not massive tomes in this edition. They're just skinny little books, straight to the point, very streamlined. And that's the first one, so that's Codex Space Marines. So I hope you guys enjoyed that look at the very first Codex for 3rd edition. At least I think it was the very first Codex for 3rd edition. Codex Space Marines. So next week, we're going to be looking at the Codex Dark Eldar. Again, the first 2 armies they came out with for 3rd edition were Space Marines and Dark Eldar, because those were the 2 armies they decided to put in the starter set. Now, the truth is, Dark Eldar didn't actually exist before this. I mean, there was fan-made codexes and stuff in 2nd edition for Dark Eldar. They were just kind of a rumor, but in 2nd edition, the sort of fan-made rumor mill created Dark Eldars, literally Slaaneshi Eldar. Eldar that have given themselves over to Slaanesh and worship Slaanesh, which is kind of cool, I guess, but and that's sort of what they kept with, I'm not going to lie. The 3rd edition onwards, I mean, the Drukari, as we know them nowadays, are literally Slaaneshi Eldar. I mean, they like torture and pleasure through pain, stuff like that, but they're running from Slaanesh. They don't worship Slaanesh, right? Because Slaanesh wants to eat all of the Eldar souls. So anyway, this was where the Dark Eldar started in 3rd edition. This was the first time we actually see them with a legitimate rule set in Warhammer 40,000, and of course they evolved from there. So next week, that's what we're going to take a look at, the introduction of the Dark Eldar. But I hope you guys enjoyed this look at Codex Space Marines. Of course, Space Marines always get all the love, so they were the very first to come out, and so they were the very first we had to cover. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, because that way you get to know when all of our videos come out. So we don't just do these Relics videos, guys. I do terrain tutorials, we do hobby tutorials, we do battle reports, we have a podcast. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, so hitting subscribe is definitely in your interest. But if you want to give back, if you want to help us out too, we also have a Patreon campaign, so go to the description below, check out our Patreon campaign. There's a whole bunch of perks on there. And otherwise, just like and subscribe, share this video around, guys, because, you know, it helps us get up on the search engines on YouTube, which helps us get a larger presence, which helps us make better videos. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to keep going through 3rd edition. We're going to look through all of the books in 3rd edition, at least all of the ones that I have. I think I have the whole collection, but I'm not entirely sure. And if I am missing anything, please shoot me an email, comment below, let me know which book you want to see in what order, or even if I am missing any of the books for 3rd edition, because I would love to be able to cover all of the content. I know I had all the stuff from 2nd. I think I have all of the stuff from 3rd, so we're going to go through that over the next few months, and we'll see you at our next encounter.
Hey everybody, I'm Adam.
And I'm Jay.
We are Encounter Wargaming.
And we wanted to celebrate hitting our 1,500 subscribers with giving some stuff away. What are we giving away, Adam?
Fort Bane! Yeah. Alright, we're calling this the 2,500 subscriber Forge Bane giveaway, because that's the target we need to hit to give this puppy away.
That's right. So the first thing you need to do is share this video, the video you are watching right now. And
then click subscribe on YouTube.
if you haven't already.
That's it for one entry.
And the more you share it, hopefully, the more people we can get to hit subscribe and hit that 2,500.
Woo!
But there are other ways to win as well.
Tell them about it.
Well, you can follow us on Twitch. That will also get you an entry. So you subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitch. On top of that,
support us on Patreon for 5 big buckaroo entries.
Crazy. So also all the people that already support us on Patreon, don't worry, you're also 5 entries. But also, you can hit subscribe on Twitch. Subscribing on Twitch will get you another 5 entries into the contest.
So good, and all of this to say thank you guys for all the support. We appreciate it very much. We've come a long way, and it's because of you.
It's true. It's been a wild ride, and thanks for all the support, all the help. and we want to give you some cool stuff as a thank you.
Awesome. So hey, remember to share this video, and guys, I think that's it. So we'll see you at our next encounter.
Like a monkey in a rocket on his way back home. Okay.